Hey, everybody. So one of our topics this week is a good old core leadership topic. It's been near and dear to my heart for a long time. When I was in grad school back in the 90s, this was one of the dominant models. And it actually had kind of two tracks where it came from. So at that time, it was called the New Leadership Paradigm. And for those of us who were kind of in that world and studied it, thought that was kind of silly. It was new, but we always said, well, what's it going to be called, 20, 30 years down the road, which is kind of where we are now. So going back and thinking about the development of leadership theory, we kind of began with the trait theories. Now, leadership's been around as long as people have been around, but as far as the formal study of it using the scientific method, it's relatively new, a little over 100 years old. Okay, so the trait theories, really World War I is what advanced it a lot. Here in the USA, we needed to form an army, okay? And so we had all these people, and we got to figure out who are going to be the officers and who are going to be the soldiers and the sailors and all the other enlisted types. So they real quick had to come up with some idea of how to be able to determine that. Okay, the trait theories dominated for about 30 years from, again, World War I for us, for the U.S., through the end of the 40s, 1947, 1948, there was a review piece by Ralph Stogdill, which eventually became the Stogdill's Handbook of Leadership, Stogdill and Bass's Handbook of Leadership, and then the Bass Handbook of Leadership, the most recent one from 2008. Stogdill did a review piece of all the trait research that was out there, and they basically concluded the traits without an explanation of the situation really don't give us a whole lot of help figuring out who's going to be a leader, an effective leader, and not an effective leader. So the trait theories then were kind of replaced by the behavioral theories. Okay, we kind of realized that it's about how you interact with people and task behaviors versus people behaviors. There were a number of conceptualizations that arose and were kind of dominant ideas during that area. Then it got to the point where we said, now what do we do with this? How do we train people? And so universal leadership, the leadership grid came up, which said that, we want people that are high task and high people. Well, with that, people began to think, well, not always. Sometimes, it's better to be a task person. Sometimes it's better to be a people person. That was the contingency era. So, with the contingency era, the conclusion was the appropriate style of leadership depends upon so many different things: the situation, the context, time constraints, the relationships with followers, who the followers are, their maturity level, all these different things came in. So really the field kind of stalled. The big conclusion was the appropriate style of leadership depends. It depends for you and it depends for you. So like I said, the field just kind of stalled in the 1970s. We had a lot of interesting little models kind of pop up, leader-member exchange, vertical dyad linkage, other ones popped up. But it went until 1978 with the publication of James McGregor Burns's book called Leadership that the field kind of took off again. James McGregor Burns was really more of a person who studied social movements and social unrest more so than a management guy. Bass then took it in 1985 and turned it into a management model. But James McGregor Burns, he identified two different fundamental styles: transactional leadership, which is based in the transaction. You do this for me, it's reward based. You do this, here's what you'll get in exchange. Okay, so operant conditioning, a lot of our motivational models that are reward based. You do this, here's what you'll get in exchange. But the question is that really leadership, or is it just simply using rewards to entice people to do stuff? The other style, Burns called transforming leadership. So transforming leadership, again, being more of a sociologist, kind of picture the people here and the people in a time of unrest, and they need to figure out a new direction. They're not happy with where they are. Somebody arises and says, hey, people, okay, how about this? I can see this better state. I can see that if we work together, that we can move to this better place. Let me offer this solution. And there's something special about that person. He or she exudes confidence. They have this vision of kind of the new state that's above and beyond what most ordinary people can see. And through this relationship, the people began to say, Yes, that's what we need so that people start moving with the leader. And in the process, the leader is inspired by the people, which inspires the people, which inspires the leader. So you have this mutual elevation of awareness and goals and motivation and calling and purpose and end state. Okay, transforming leadership. And the counter is transactional. So that was Burns, James McGregor Burns, 1978 was his big book. Then in 1985, Bernard Bass, again, we now have the Bass Handbook of Leadership. Bass, and he came from Ohio State, Bass was connected with Stockdale, who did the big review piece and had the books, the big review on leadership theory. This was the Bass Handbook. After Stockdale passed on, Bass took it over. So this big old thick book back in 2008 has a record of a lot of different leadership theory. So I actually used an earlier version of this in my very first master's class. I used a version of this for my dissertation, and actually some of the pieces that I wrote younger in life are actually referenced in here as well. So transformational leadership is what Bass wrote about. So he took those ideas, transforming and transactional, and he created transformational and transactional. So this was the big model. Again, 1985 is when the book came out. I was in the PhD program less than 10 years later. It was being used in a lot of different ways. That's one of the things that I've used as kind of the foundation of a lot of things in grad school when I was writing. And actually, we did a big piece when I was in my late 20s with a bunch of other, 3 other grad students in the management program. We did a meta-analysis, a study of studies on Bass's work on the transformational leadership literature. And as a 28-year-old, I got to go present it at one of the premier leadership research sessions at our big Academy of Management conference up in Vancouver in front of Bernard Bass and in front of all these other people whose research we were citing and referencing. And so that was kind of an exciting yet scary time in life. But it's the multi-factor leadership questionnaire is what they used to study this. And so within this, transformational leadership. Now, so I see Burns as each one raises each other to higher levels, social movements. Within business, within an organization. Now here, almost think about our class. So in our time together, okay, so I've got stuff in my head that I'm trying to impart into your heads and inspire you to think about this and apply it to your lives. And we get to work together over a semester or a term. And in the process, hopefully I pull you up and maybe you inspire me. But really, I inspire you and then you're gone. And then a new group comes in and we work together and then inspire and gone. Think about within a business, within a big organization. You've got someone in a management leadership position and new people come in underneath. And through their interactions, these people are inspired and they move up and then maybe they promote or they get jobs elsewhere or they leave the organization. So really with the transformational, I kind of see it as more of this person is kind of more fixed. They are able to vary, but they pull these people up. And then we have more people that are pulled up. We're transforming, they both raise each other. This one's a little different. Organizations are different than in these big social movements. Okay, so within transformational leadership, Bass identified 2 dimensions. Transactional, which is very similar to Burns, and then the other one is transformational. Now, I'm actually looking at the old paper that I wrote and that we had submitted to a journal way back in the day based on that big presentation at the Academy of Management. So on the transactional side, there are different dimensions. One of them is called contingent reward, was the original conceptualization. Contracts exchange rewards for effort, promises rewards for good performance, and recognizes accomplishment. Okay, that's operant conditioning. That's reward-based motivation. Then also within that, so contingent reward, management by exception, active, which means watches and searches for deviations from the rules and standards, and then takes corrective actions. And then we have management by exception, passive, which says owner intervenes only if standards are not met. Okay, so those were the transactional dimensions. And then actually they had another one called laissez-faire, hands off, kind of abdicates responsibility, avoids making decisions, just kind of lets the people do stuff. Okay, so laissez-faire, the transactional dimensions, contingent reward, management by exception, active, management by exception, passive. Then we have the other ones, and these are the transformational dimensions. And the first one, now it was originally called charisma. Okay, so charisma is this super personal power. It's given by the followers to the leader. Okay, that's different from being a boss and having positional power. So there's something special about this person. It's a God-given gift. They can see things, they can do things, they've got the confidence, they can speak well, they can inspire people to say, yes, that is different and wonderful, and yes, I want to follow. So charisma, and then another one is inspiration. They're able to inspire the people. Again, being inspirational doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader. You can have a great story and inspire people, but you're not leading them toward goals. Okay, intellectual stimulation. You get them to think differently. You've stimulated their intellect. I never considered that before. Okay, intellectual stimulation. And then the last one actually has its roots in the behavioral studies of Stockdale and of Bass. It's called individualized consideration, which means that each person, each of the followers, each of the people in the group feels like they have a relationship with the one in charge, and they get to know them, and that they're being treated as individuals. So those dimensions, charisma, which was later changed to idealized influence and inspirational appeals, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. So it's really the 4 I's is what it developed into. But kind of my story is that as grad students, we wrote this up and submitted it. It was recognized and won a couple of awards. We submitted it to a journal, but actually in our paper, we found some things that kind of didn't match up real well with kind of the popular ideas. When transformational leadership does show wonderful outcomes, it brings about better outcomes than the transactional. Transformational brings about better outcomes. But what we found in the paper through this meta-analysis, a study of studies, is that when followers were asked if they were more motivated, if they were more satisfied, if they exerted more effort for these leaders, then the correlations were really high. Transformation, because they were done on the same survey. Tell me about this person, and then flip it over and tell me about the outcomes. So when we called it perceptual, okay, percept. I perceive, I rate the leader on these dimensions, and then I turn the page over, and then I also tell you that, yes, I also exert a lot more effort and I'm more satisfied. Okay, there's a bias in there. When you take the percept out and then actually put it next to widgets produced, okay, a hard outcome, those correlations were still significant, but they dropped a lot. Okay, and that's kind of what is mentioned here in this book where we are cited. Incorrectly. They cited it under my first name instead of my last name. So anyways, as you go through these ideas, transformational, transforming, that there's something special about the one in charge. It's personal power. It's given to the one in charge by the followers. Position power is written up in the job description. Okay, it's in the handbook, the policy manual of the organization. Leadership is something different. It's given. Okay, it's ascribed to the person by the followers and exists in the minds of the followers. So you're seen as charismatic, you're seen as inspirational, you're seen as one who can get them to think differently and to be inspired. Okay, maybe I've been doing it wrong all this time. And then lastly, they feel this personal connection with you. So we LMX, Leader Member Exchange, is one of those that has come up. In-group and out-group. Okay, that there's some followers who form special relationships with the one in charge, and then others who just form kind of ordinary relationships. The transforming leader is one who makes everybody feel like an in-grouper. that there's a special connection and you all work together to go toward these really cool and interesting idealized goals. So good stuff. This, again, some of my favorite, just good stories. Get on there, look in the book, dig through the book, get online, find some articles. You can get into the library system of the university and click in and type in transformational, transforming transactional leadership, and just see all kind of wonderful resources, and then also online. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for bearing with me. It's a really good story, really good stuff to file away. That's what makes us educated on these topics. All right, thanks.